What's up, y'all? It's your boy. It is nighttime. I am on the way back to Gainesville. Just got done doing a Bible study with my dad and my sister. That's a loud truck. And I have a light in my car, so I was like, hey, why not just yap for a second. I have something I just wanted to pose to y'all. I guess just a cool thought that I had. I don't know, just kind of from our reading. So we were reading in Philippians 3. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. This idea that everything else is worthless is not Ecclesiastes, not meaningless, but worthless, and to count it as a loss, when compared with the infinite knowledge of knowing Christ Jesus. That's what Philippians 3:8 says. It says, yes, everything else is worthless when compared with the infinite value of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. For his sake I've discarded everything else, counting it all as garbage. One translation says as dung, as poop basically, so that I could gain Christ. And I thought that was just such a beautiful idea, that there's nothing else that matters. There's nothing else. I mean, there's literally nothing else. And when Paul was talking about it, he had just listed this whole category of all these things that he used to cling to. He was like, dude, I was a Pharisee. I was circumcised at the age I was supposed to be. I was a true Israelite, if there ever was one. When it comes to the law, I followed it. I followed it to the nth degree. I mean, every single law, every single thing, I followed it pure. And when it comes to righteousness by the law standpoint, your boy had it. But everything else, I count it now, all those things and everything else in my life, all is lost when it comes to the infinite value of knowing Christ. And I think it's so beautiful. Paul, being someone who had all of this religious prowess, he was, and he even says, he's like, bro, if anyone could boast in their flesh, it was your boy. But I've realized that there's nothing like this Jesus guy, and he's the only one I could ever boast in, and the only one that actually matters. And everything else, anything short of him is loss, because he is the only gain. It is him or it is loss. Like, that was the reality that he had come to understand when he met him on the road to Damascus. And when the same guy that he was persecuting, he ends up meeting and realizing that he's real. Like, that was the reality he came to. And he's like, oh my goodness. What did it lead him to was that everything else, anything that's not Christ, is loss. Everything should flow downstream from this one guy, because he actually did rise from the grave 3 days later. And it was just so beautiful. And it's funny, that's not even anything I wanted to talk to y'all about, but just so beautiful, like his perspective of like, I push on to fight to know him and live in his will and his calling for my life, because everything else is meaningless when compared to the value of knowing him. And that should be applicable in our lives, in everything that we do. Everything should pale in comparison to Christ. Ministry should pale in comparison to Christ. Church should pale in comparison to knowing Christ. Evangelism pales in comparison to knowing Christ. Love pales in comparison. Everything pales in comparison to knowing Christ, because he is the ultimate gain. He is the top of the pyramid that everything should flow down from. He is the paper that we write the list of our priorities on. He is not a priority. He should be the paper we write it on. Everything to do with him, we should be obsessed and just enthralled and encapsulated, I guess is a word. So I don't know all the words for that I don't even know. Everything should flow from knowing him. If you do ministry and you don't know Christ, it's pointless. If you evangelize and you don't know Christ, you're still a problem. You might reach someone else for the gospel, but do you know the gospel yourself? That's the most important thing. Do you know the gospel yourself? You could love other people. If it's not from Christ's love, it doesn't matter. You could be kind. If it's not because of Christ, it doesn't matter. For Paul's perspective, you can follow the whole law. If you don't know Christ, it doesn't matter, because he did that. And yet again, that is not to say evangelism, ministry, church, all of these things are so important and so awesome. Paul is saying, I figured out there's something that's of the most importance. I figured out there's something more important than everything I've ever done in my whole life, and it's Christ. And that is a reality for all of us as believers. Everything else flows downstream. If this Jesus guy was not who he said he was, and he didn't actually do what he said he did, there would be no ministry, there would be no church that I go to, there would be no love that flows from his love, there would be no we love because he loved first vibes, there would be no hope, there would be no joy, there would be no satisfaction found in him, there would be no made right in God's sight, there would be none of this. We would be Jewish. Things would be a little bit different. And so what he found was that there's something about this guy that makes him so important and different that everything else that's not him, I count as loss, to where I can count him as gain. And just such a beautiful perspective. But the thing I wanted to talk about too is kind of like later in Philippians 3, he just casually says this, continue imitating me, which goes back to, I think it's 1 Corinthians 11, maybe? 1 Corinthians 11:1, where Paul, yet again, talks about imitate me as I imitate Christ. What a challenge. Like, my boy just says it. He's like, yo, dog, imitate me as I imitate Christ. My goodness, I wish I could say that. But your boy's messed up. Don't imitate me, please. Like, imitate me in the good parts, not in the bad ones. Paul didn't clarify it. Imitate me as I imitate Christ, and you'll be right. And I think it was just such a beautiful challenge as I read that, and then as I read this today with my dad and my sister, like, Paul doubles down, hey, continue imitating your boy. Like, what if we lived lives, obviously we love these what if questions, what if we lived a life so dedicated to Christ, because everything else is counted as loss when he is our gain, so that we can know him? What if we live lives like that, so deeply just entranced with the gospel, where we can't shift our gaze from him and he is all we care about and all we think about and focus on, to where when we bring other people into our lives to see how we live, the closer they get to us, the closer they get to him. And I think that is just the most beautiful challenge of all time, because it's literally what should happen anyways. And so what Paul is not saying there, like, Paul, he literally talks about having a thorn in his flesh throughout some of the letters he writes, specifically one letter. Romans. But, like, so we know Paul wasn't perfect. So he's not saying, hey, imitate me in all my flaws. What he's saying is, like, to me it seems like, hey, come into my life, see the way that I live, let me tell you how I live and the things I do, and imitate that. It'll push you closer to him. And it should be the same for us. Yes, we are not Paul in the sense of, like, we didn't write half the New Testament. Like, I get it. But Paul was just as human as we are. And so the challenge that gives us is, are you living a life where you could look at someone that's a new believer, or someone who's struggling in their faith, and say, hey, bro, imitate me as I imitate Christ, and that'll lead you closer to him? And the answer should be yes. Yes, I know we struggle. Yes, I know we have problems. But, like, I should be able to say, hey, imitate me as I imitate Christ. You'll get closer to him. Like, that should mean that I'm consistently reading my Bible. I'm consistently fighting to know him and fall in love with him. I'm praying all the time. I'm listening to worship music. I'm watching sermons. I'm doing all these things that are pushing me towards him, to where I can say, hey, imitate me as I imitate Christ, bro. And it's just such a beautiful challenge. And so I just felt challenged in that sense of, am I living every day of my life in a way where on this specific day or that specific day I can say, hey, imitate me as I imitate Christ? Do my days look like that? And it hit me a little bit. It's like, well, some of them really don't. It's like, and they need to. Every single day should look like that, where I can say it. Because Paul didn't say, hey, imitate me on my Tuesday when I'm out doing evangelism as I imitate Christ. No, Paul said, imitate me as I imitate Christ. And that means in every category, in every area, in every aspect of his life, every day. And what if we lived that way? What if we counted everything else as loss so we could gain Christ? And everything else was literally worthless and garbage and meaningless, Ecclesiastes style, compared to the infinite value of knowing him. And what if that's how we treated our lives, to the point to where then we could say, hey, bro, come imitate your boy and you'll get closer to Jesus. And it's not in a prideful way. It's just I'm in love with this guy and I can't get over him. And so if you want to get to know him more, bro, come around me. I'm as imperfect as the next person, but I know who I love and I know who I follow. So yeah, just a challenge for y'all. Live a life where you could bring a young believer or even a non-believer, or even a struggling believer into your life and say, hey, imitate me. And they should get closer to Christ the closer they get to you. And just remember, everything else should all flow down from this one goal, and that is knowing Christ. That is the most important thing you could ever do with your life, is have a relationship with Jesus. Everything else flows downstream from that one decision of whether you believe in him or not. And so, yeah, even though we now do already believe in him, Paul is saying let's not get over that. Let's fall in love with him every day. Let's remember that everything else is worthless when compared with that value, infinite value of knowing him. And so fall in love with the gospel over and over and over again, and then do it over and over and over and over again, unlimited amount of times, because it's the most important thing we could ever do, is know Jesus and then just know him deeper every day. So I just thought that was really interesting. I thought that was a cool challenge, and a cool perspective from your boy Paul. But yeah, so that's my nighttime session. I probably should turn this light off in my car. It probably looks sketchy with me driving around like this. I'm driving home. I'm not just getting in my car to make a video. Probably looks weird with my light being on, driving down Waldo Road back to Gainesville is what I'm saying. But yeah, I hope that encourages y'all and challenges y'all in some sort of way. It challenges your boy. So yeah, I hope it does the same for y'all. All the things, all the people, all the places, all the stuff. You can't really see me if I get close to the camera, so I guess I'll yeah, peace out, rainbow trout, all the things.